Hello, I would like to speak about hypocrisy in prayer, and it's going to be subject source of Matthew 6:5, and it starts off with, and when you pray, do you must not be like hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. Prayer is a conversation with God, and a Christian person, if he's truly like growing, prayer is just automatically included. There's a saying of that God talks to us through the Bible, but we talk to God through prayer, and I think that's a great way of looking at it. Most of us pray for primarily, you could say, two things, but you could add some more. Some of us pray that because we want to experience God. Other ones pray because we want to get a request for our prayers. Some because of discipline, other, but I think the two main ones is the presence of God, to experience the presence of God, and request for prayer. Regarding the experiencing the presence of God, spiritual obedience is key, because you can experience the grace of God with any spiritual obedience, and I think you should just focus on strictly be obedient to God, and you can experience God anywhere. Now, regards to your prayers being answered, how can we get our prayers answered? This is one of the most, you could say, biggest things that everyone's trying to find, like this recipe. And you know that the disciples actually asked Jesus how they are to pray. And this is in this verse that we read as the main source, is in the subject of it. And Jesus gave them the Lord's Prayer. But what's interesting is right after the Lord's Prayer on the Sermon on the Mount, he makes this statement about hypocrisy. Jesus makes hypocrisy one of the biggest downfalls to any prayer life. It's showing off. It's not even praying. And when you pray, how it states, I find it amazing how it assumes that a believer will pray. It doesn't question it. No, you will pray. Apostle Paul's first mark of conversion in Acts was that he began to pray. Prayer is a normal part of a spiritual walk. This life has trouble and has a lot of problems. And there's always something to pray for. It's like always something new. You must not be like a hypocrite. What's interesting, there's hypocrisy in churches. Sometimes we think that, in church is going to be different. No. God clearly talks about how there's hypocrisy. There's people that don't even pray for real. It's just fake. You can't expect a fake prayer to have a real answer from God. One of the marks of a dead prayer is hypocrisy, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners. There's people that pray loud and long to seem spiritual. There's people that could try to pick up their hands and so forth just to be like showing off. I'm sure you have experienced dead prayers. It could be loud, it could be empty pumping up, but it has no life in it. You don't sense God. The prayer doesn't get anywhere, and you're not edified with it. Why? And you can ask yourself this: is why are you praying? What's your motive? What's the reason for this praying? What does this prayer even mean? Imagine if someone is saying that he's such a close friend to you, and that he talks to you so much, and while he talks to you, he doesn't even pay attention to you. He repeats the same thing over and over, and just as a check mark, would you call that fellowship with them? And I believe this is us a lot of times. Our prayers are like this check mark. We don't have this sense of being like we're actually, there's a God, and we are expressing our hearts to him, and we show less respect towards God than towards friends and so forth. There's people that brag about their prayer lives. Oh, I prayed 45 minutes. Or I prayed, the church prayers was 45 minutes. Or I pray an hour daily. They got so different counts. And I sometimes wonder, how do they keep count? Do they just have a timer and sit there and be like, prayer's over, enough praying, let's end this? Like, it seems foolish if someone just comes around and says, I talked with so and so for 45 minutes, an hour. I've talked 45 minutes daily. It's like foolish. It's nonsense if you were going to say anything. But in terms of God, this is how we think about it. Showmanship is all around. I hear people bragging about their fasting. Like, who cares, And there's people that have, they're talking about fasting. They fast so much, but they have fat rolls on the back of their heads. And I'm like, dude, I tried fasting. and I lost weight instantly. And these people, they're saying they're fasting all this time and they're not losing weight. Nothing's changing. It's just, there's people that just fast just to show off their spirituality. Our fasting and our prayer is supposed to be something between us and God. No one needs to know. Showmanship just kills everything. Like, who cares about what people are thinking about us? Like, do you think God is a fool and he doesn't see that? A hypocritical prayer is no prayer at all. And how it says that they may be seen by others. That's the motive. Flesh always wants to show off. Sinful nature is never totally reasonable. It doesn't even make sense. You're spending all this time for devotions, and you're just doing this so people can think good of you. Fleshy prayers bring fleshly results. It doesn't change anything. I remember Colossians 2, and you're looking for the true fruits of the Spirit, and you could have these long prayers, and nothing changes, and your heart doesn't melt, and so forth. And the point is that prayer was absolutely useless. And I think you could even test services. If you go to the service and you leave the service exactly the same, and you're not enlightened by God, what was the point of that service? Maybe some of us are like this. We are surprised that God doesn't answer us, but what do we expect? How can we expect God to answer us if we care about what people think? We care about our language, the right words we says. But God sees everything. If you're this hypocrite that has this lifestyle and in church, and you have these hypocritical prayers, you should want to hear what God has to say to you. And you know what he says? Truly I say to you, they have received your reward. You got your reward. You got exactly what you wanted. You just got that people think you're spiritual. Absolutely no spiritual result. Absolutely no more love in your life. Absolutely no contrition and so forth. No change of your heart. Just the same old selfish dead person because of hypocritical prayers. Fleshly prayer, fleshly result. No reward for your prayer in heaven, no results on this earth, no answered prayers, no experience of God's presence. To expect the answer from heaven when the prayer needs to be for real. We can so often try to copy the form of other revivals and instead of focusing on Christ. Like, oh, they prayed this, man, they prayed in a bucket or this or that. And we crave this spiritual thing. And I think this is all nonsense. Just be obedient. Just obey Christ. You know what you got to do. We have more than enough like that. We can barely try to even obey. Instead of just chasing after all these things, why don't you try obeying God? I don't mean that you should hide away when you pray, but the prayer needs to be real. We all love seeing fire. Be that fire. Be that true flame towards God, where other people would want to join you in that flame. It's better to have a real prayer and a real flame for 30 seconds than just empty one for an hour. Empty prayers. Look, God paid a huge price for us. He wants to hear us. He wants to hear our heart. He wants to be the center of our attention. You know, like I've gone through multiple churches. Like recently was more in the past. I was in a church where everything was about the louder pump it and so forth. And recently I'm in a church where they actually have corporal prayer silent, like they sit silently and pray. And honestly, you can experience God one way and another way. It really makes no difference. The point is is your heart crying out to God. All the yelling and all this, it just does nothing. You know, it's just amazing, you know. And if we're Christians, it's a normal thing that we want to express our heart to God. I want to share some concluding points. And the first one is, prayer is a normal part of a spiritual life. If you're spiritually healthy, you will pray automatically. You know, like some say, we need to pray more. No. You need to become Christian. You need to become healthy, Christian healthy, and then you will be praying automatically. Secondly, hypocrisy is one of the greatest downfall of any prayer life. And I want to say any Christian experience. Hypocrisy is the biggest things. And thirdly, a prayer focused on people's opinion is just dead. Any spiritual devotions or worship is dead when it's just focused on people. And there's so much of these kind of things. We've got to shake these things. It's just it's just dead. And like even other texts says, let hypocrisy be put away from you. And I want to finalize with this finally. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward.